Chapter 30. Day 4, 1800 hours. Pag was lighting up the sky with his minigun and fireballs as Cameron and company charged in to help. One of the pteranodons swooped down and snatched up one of the slayers with its long, sharp claws. He screamed as he was lifted into the air, but only until another pteranodon snapped its long beak out and severed his head. "Pag!" Cameron shouted as he charged toward the boy. He was fighting hard to keep the flying dinosaurs off him. "We're here!" Stephen was right on Cameron's heels, and he immediately began firing into the sky with his minigun when they stopped.
"Cameron!"
Pag yelled back.
"Glad you're here. There's definitely more than a dozen."
Cameron stared fearfully into the sky, noticing that the bodies of the pteranodons were nearly blotting out the sunlight.
"They keep coming,"
Pag continued.
"They've killed like 6 people.
"Everyone inside," Cameron ordered the remaining slayers. "Stay away from the windows. We're taking over." Cameron hurled a fireball into a group of the pteranodons. It exploded and sent their bodies in all directions, pissing them off immensely.
"Hey, Blondie!"
Maria shouted to Andreas.
"On me! This fight is made for us!"
The rockets on her feet lifted her into the air, and she began unloading her minigun on the dinos. Andreas joined her, and as he lifted into the air, Cameron briefly caught a glimpse under his loincloth. He groaned and looked away. "Where's Horton?" Cameron yelled to Pag. "Is he alive?"
"Over there!"
Pag answered, pointing to Stephen's house.
"Everyone is in there."
"Come on, Stephen," Cameron snapped. "How much money do you have?"
"Why?"
Stephen asked with a concerned tone. "Time for you to show a little goodwill," Cameron replied. "I need you to buy some more exosuits." Stephen sighed, but did not protest. The two of them arrived at the stone house, and Cameron knelt down and gently tapped on the door. "Horton!" Cameron yelled. "Horton, it's me, Cameron! Come to the door!" After a moment, the door opened a crack, and Horton peered out. He looked at Cameron, and then at Stephen behind him, and his eyes went wide. "Is that Stephen?" he shouted. "For fuck's sake, you need to make up your mind what you want to do with him!"
"Up yours, dickhead!"
Stephen shouted as he batted a pteranodon away with his shield. "Both of you shut up!" Cameron ordered. "How many hunters are alive?" "2 left," Horton shakily replied. "How many tinkerers?" Cameron demanded. 3, Horton said. Cameron turned to Stephen and nodded at him. "Do you have 5 million happy coins?" he yelled.
"Aye."
The look on Stephen's face was one of fear. Cameron could tell that the answer was yes, that he didn't want to part with his money. After a moment he growled and nodded his head.
"Mate, that's all I have."
"Great," Cameron said. "Buy 5 exosuits now."
"Cameron, that's all my money."
Stephen reiterated.
"It's everything I have."
"Do it or go back in the box," Cameron screamed. Stephen growled and mumbled to himself as exosuits began appearing all around him. Cameron nodded and slapped Stephen on his exosuit's shoulder. "Good job, mate," Cameron said, emphasizing the word. He grinned deviously at Stephen and then looked back at Horton. "Get your hunters and tinkerers out here and suit up," he shouted. "We need as much ranged firepower as we can get." Horton reluctantly nodded and turned toward everyone else inside the house. After a moment of screaming at them, they poured out of the building and started climbing into the exosuits. "We're going to make this quick and easy," Cameron shouted at the ranged fighters. "That sky needs to be cleared out. We need to kill them all. I'm counting on you guys." At that, Cameron turned and hurled another fireball at the sky. One of the pteranodons crashed to the ground, dead. "Pteranodon killed. Level 11. Plus 550 experience." That 550 experience was satisfying. Apparently the animals and monsters didn't have the same experience modifier as players did. With that in mind, Cameron went to work. A sudden surge of gunfire and magic began blasting into the sky around them, and Floof and Bernard smiled at each other. Floof deflected a dive-bombing pteranodon with his shield and swiped at it with his sword. He didn't kill the beast, but injured its wings so that it couldn't fly. He and Bernard both charged forward and began hacking away at it with their swords. The dinosaur screeched and swiped at them, but its attacks were useless against their armor. Finally, it ran out of HP and collapsed on the ground.
"Exemplary work, Bernard!"
Floof shouted at his battle buddy.
"Surely a hot drink and a mountain of pillows await you following this battle."
Thank you, Mr. Floof.
Bernard nodded his head reverently.
And your display of bravery and compassion are among the most resplendent I have seen thus far.
"Resplendent,"
Floof echoed as he and Bernard started running to the main group.
Floof, the resplendent. How appealing.
Pag screamed as a pair of talons wrapped around the arm of his exosuit. The pteranodon flapped its massive wings and squawked as it tried to fly away with the boy. Pag pulled back, shaking his arm wildly to waggle the monster free.
Stop it!
Pag yelled.
Quit it, you asshole!
He blasted the pteranodon square in its prehistoric gooch, surprising it enough that it let go and started flying away in what appeared to be embarrassment. Pag wasn't having it, though. He swung his minigun around and opened fire on the creature, which screamed as bullets ripped through its leathery body. It crashed to the ground, and Pag launched himself forward, hitting it with another fireball. The pteranodon let out one more squeal before it collapsed on the ground.
Suck on this!
Pag snapped as he fired his gun into the back of the creature's long, pointed head.
"Mind your language, Pag!"
Floof shouted as he ran by.
"Filthiness is very unbecoming in such a young boy."
Thanks, Dad.
Pag snorted at Floof and looked down at the dead pteranodon for a moment before turning away and rejoining the battle.
Maria!
Andreas shouted.
I did it, Maria!"
Shut up, Andreas!
Maria shouted as she turned to see what he was going on about.
Shut up and... Oh.
2 pteranodons were perched on Andreas's shoulders, flapping their wings wildly as he soared past Maria. She watched with disbelief as he fired his weapon at the flock indiscriminately, laughing wildly as he did.
"I trained them!"
he yelled.
"The ability works!"
She was intrigued, but as he flew off into the distance, laughing like a psycho and blasting pteranodons with his minigun, she couldn't help but feel that Andreas with 2 pet dinosaurs was a terribly bad thing.
"Back!"
she yelled as she blasted a swooping pteranodon with her pistols. It fell to the ground and she leveled up. "Keep them off me!" Cameron shouted as he launched another fireball. The pteranodon crashed to the ground and Stephen finished it off with his hammer. Cameron checked his notifications and smiled. Pteranodon killed, ×2, level 10, plus 500 experience ×2, plus 1,000 experience. Pteranodon killed, level 11, plus 550 experience. Achievement unlocked, Dinosaur Hunter. Congratulations, you have killed 5 dinosaurs, plus 50 experience. Level up! Congratulations! Your hard work, Dinosaur Rampage, has paid off. You have reached level 18. You have obtained 1 Stat Nut, 3 Ability Nuts, 3 Skill Nuts. Please allocate your nuts wisely. Your health and armor have been replenished. Ability unlocked. Craft ammunition. Fuck yeah! Cameron shouted and pumped his fist into the air. Around him, the hunters and tinkerers were blasting everything they had into the air. Pteranodons were falling all over the place, and their numbers were rapidly thinning. Cameron smiled at his people fighting together, and at Andreas, who mowed down the last of the monsters while everybody reeled in disgust as he swooped by.
"Oh, the loincloth!"
Floof screamed with horror. Andreas's loincloth was flapping up and down wildly in the wind, as well as what was beneath it.
"My eyes! I did not ask for this! People like you are why we didn't want any part of the Netherlands, you wonky Dutch bastard!"
Floof angrily shook his fist in the air, and Andreas smiled widely and ignorantly as he waved to his Belgian brother. As the last pteranodon's body hit the ground, the area was suddenly engulfed with cheering and applause. Guns were fired into the air, people were embracing each other, and the entire battlefield had become one giant field of celebration.
"Ha ha! We did it!"
Gino boomed as he raised his axe in the air.
"We have beaten the dinosaurs!"
Even Stephen wore a satisfied smile. Cameron looked over at him and the two nodded at each other, showing mutual respect for the first time.
I can't believe it!
Pag cheered as he ran over to Cameron, stomping on the bodies of the dinosaurs as he did.
We just killed a flock of pteranodons.
We're eating good tonight,
Horton added.
There's enough meat here to feed an army.
Congratulations, everybody! DJ's voice suddenly announced. You have all done the unthinkable. Why, who among you woke up and imagined that you would be fighting dinosaurs today? Excellent show, my friends. The viewers absolutely loved it. Everyone fell silent as they listened to DJ speak. For the most part, nobody trusted him, but they all did fear him. With that in mind, DJ said, implying that he had something interesting to tell them.
You have summoned the area boss. Congratulations. Now we will see what you are really made of.
DJ fell silent, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. The trees shook, and the bodies of the pteranodons quivered in place. A few of the buildings that the Slayers had constructed crumbled, and suddenly, about 200 yards from where they stood, the ground opened up.
This doesn't look good,
Floof said with a fearful expression.
This, in fact, looks very bad.
A massive, gray, scaly hand shot out of the hole that had formed and dug its claws into the ground. Another joined the first, and whatever owned the hands began to claw its way out of the hole.
Oh no,
Pag whined and threw his head back.
We're going to die this time.
A large reptilian head peeked out of the hole, and with red glowing eyes, the monster hissed at the people before it. It continued climbing out of the pit, growling and snorting with every move. Finally, one of its massive scaly clawed feet hit the ground, and then another. It stood up, and everyone looked on in fear at the 40-foot-tall beast. The monster snarled at the sight of Cameron and his crew, and it turned its head to the sky and roared, a column of fire erupting from its mouth. With a horrendous growl, it turned toward the group and began to walk. What is that? Cameron fearfully asked Grizzly.
Calamitous Rexus,
Grizzly replied solemnly.
level 20, 20,000 HP. Cameron, be safe.
Everybody glanced back and forth at each other, and hope seemed to melt away from their faces. Eventually, all their eyes landed on Cameron, and he could do nothing but stare at the giant horror lumbering toward them. Escape felt impossible. They had never experienced anything like what they were staring at, and Cameron had no idea what to say. "Do your best, everyone," he finally shouted. "If we die, then we don't die alone. If we live, it's only going to be done together. I need all of you to do your best." Magic ignited, and guns were pointed in the direction of the beast. A few builders had placed blueprints for ballistae and were working diligently with gatherers to get the materials in place. As the monster drew closer, Cameron understood that there was no going back. Only their future mattered, only their survival mattered, and the only way a future was possible was with the death of Calamitous Rexus.